What is going on, everybody? And a little deja vu there. Welcome to the Thursday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. Joining me, as always, Slim Cliffy, slowly morphing into Radko Gudis. How we doing?
Yeah, not doing too bad. I just put the intro on loop. Would have been funny if you just got through the intro while that was still going on. Not a bad Thursday. Pretty wild Leafs Stars game last night. I don't think it necessarily started with kind of like that blindside hit. It was on Jake McCabe, I think. But there are a lot of big hits. Like that looked like, the first game of a first round of a Leafs Bruins playoffs matchup, not Leafs Stars. I was wondering where all the animosity was coming from. Maybe it just built up over the All-Star break. 7 games here tonight. Couple injury returns that we're sure of, couple that were not. One certainly big injury news, a bit of injury news in the New Jersey game. Obviously, Jack Hughes is back. We'll get to that a little later in the show, but getting all these guys healthy, like I enjoyed playing the New Jersey Devils in DFS. It's been pretty brutal for the last month to not really be able to use them or use them as much, certainly. So lots of options here tonight. Couple really chalky spots we'll touch on, but for a 7-game slate, I think this is a pretty good one. It's another one of those slates. I guess there's one game at 8 Eastern and then one at 9 Eastern, but there's really only one like quote late game. So at least we'll know pretty early on if we're dead or not.
Yeah, and the thing is, like with these players coming back from injury, it's kind of the perfect time with the All-Star break just happening. Like the hockey is so choppy right now. There's data to show that like after teams having 5+ days off, the scoring goes down. The play, like you've seen it this week, it's just been low scoring, ugly hockey. So like these players coming back now, it's probably a good thing. 7-gamer. It's actually a pretty interesting one, like you mentioned. There's some interesting chalk spots, and it's not like chalk Washington the other night where I absolutely hated. I actually like the spots that are chalky. It's just a matter of whether you want to play them or not. So before we get into this slate, just want to say thank you again for all the support with the affiliate link signups and the super chats. You guys are amazing. It's been incredible. Honestly, didn't think we would get to this point in the season, but thanks to you guys, you've hooked us up, and we're continuing to give you all this free content. We're here for you guys. Obviously, we're here for us too. It helps us out, but main reason is we're here for you. So let's get into this slate. Starting off with a banger. Vancouver Canucks with a 3 total heading into Boston. The Bruins have a 3.4 total. We were talking about this game a little bit before the show, and we were both a little bit surprised how high the Bruins total was. Vancouver getting disrespected by the Vegas markets, it feels like. I don't know. They're a good defensive team. Especially, you put Suter on that second line. He's a pretty good defensive player. You add Elias Lindholm onto the wing. He wasn't the best defensive center, but his defensive responsibilities on the wing is less, and he's a better player than Andrei Kuzmenko. That's not really saying much, but yeah. So it's been interesting here because Boston 2 is getting a lot of ownership here. Zacha, Pastrnak, JVR. They're fully correlated, but it's not the best power play matchup. Like Vancouver, since they got Zadorov, they've had a pretty good penalty kill. And they are pretty good at 5-on-5. You're probably going to see the Zacha line go out against Elias Pettersson. And the Elias Pettersson line, Pettersson and Mikheyev have good defensive numbers together. You throw Lindholm in the mix, at worst, they'll be as good as they were with Kuzmenko. You know what I mean? And they'll probably improve. So it's not the best 5-on-5 matchup. It's not the best power play matchup. I think they're fine in MME, but like at 12% at 18.3, there are a ton of other spots I prefer. Now, again, they're fully correlated, and Vancouver, if they take 5 penalties, Boston scores 2 on the power play. They get there. Obviously, that's the reason you play them in MME. In single entry, I'm probably going to prioritize another line here. You want to go to that second line or the Marchand line? Like the defensive numbers you were mentioning Miller and Besser with anyone but Kuzmenko have been good, and you throw Pia Suter into the mix, they have like a 65-minute sample, but their defensive numbers are really, really good. So I don't have a ton of interest in full stacking Boston here tonight. I think, you can one off Marchand, you can two-man like JVR Pasternak, something like that, but I don't have a ton of interest where, they have a 3.4 total. The Devils have a 3.5, Florida has a 3.5. Islanders have a 3.4. So like there's other lines that I'm going to prioritize. On the Vancouver side, no one's playing the Miller Besser line. And I don't know, man. Like Boston's been a pretty good defensive team. You mentioned it on Tuesday's show that they kind of run into trouble when they have Pasternak and Marchand on the same line. They're not on the same line. So they've been pretty sound defensively otherwise. But 1% for that Pedersen line or for that Miller Besser line, I'll probably have them in my MME mix. Now, you want to go to the Pedersen, Lindholm, Mikheyev line? It's fine. I know Lindholm had 2 goals on the power play. They didn't do much at 5-on-5, but maybe they're getting their chemistry, whatever. So all in all, this feels like an MME game, despite a 6.5 total.
Yeah, I'll start with the Boston side. As you mentioned, there is a lot of ownership coming in on the Boston top line. 12.3% expect. Well, we have them listed as Boston too, the Pasternak, Zacha, Van Riemsdyk line, but 12.3% for that line. Still positive leverage because these guys are almost certainly going to be correlated on the top power play. They ran power play units this morning in practice without Marchand there, but Marchand's going to be playing. So we assume that it's going to be a perfectly correlated power play. That line in a small sample has pretty good numbers together. 75 shot attempts, 3.6 expected goals, and a little over 60 minutes together. Not a huge sample, but we talked on the show on Tuesday about how well Pasternak and JVR have played together this season. Honestly, JVR has been just really good in general all year, like almost no matter what line he's played on. I know his shooting percentage is a little low. It's like 70%, which is low for him. Maybe that rebounds over the next 30 games or whatever. I guess we'll find out. But yeah, I think the worst thing you could say about the Vancouver penalty kill is it's been middle of the road the last 20 games. But the thing is, it's the same thing with Boston. Boston's penalty kill itself, that's one thing we talked about a lot before the break was that Boston's penalty kill had kind of started sliding. Their last 20 games, they're basically in the middle of the league by shots against per 20 minutes while shorthanded. And Boston is taking a lot of penalties, 4.2 minor penalties taken per game over the last 8 weeks. That's amongst the most penalized teams in the league. We saw Vancouver's power play score twice against Carolina, who have the best penalty kill in the league, at least by shots against, certainly not by goaltending. We'll get to Carolina in a second. Oh my God, that team. But I agree with you. I just think 12% is a little high. We'll get to some other high-ish price lines a little bit later. We'll get to New Jersey, we'll get to Florida, Winnipeg, and so on, that are coming in with less ownership. And where Boston's power play has been good, not elite, not necessarily a great power play spot for them. If they do see the Pedersen line, I was looking at their numbers, like you said, without Kuzmenko, the Pedersen line without Kuzmenko this season, 2 expected goals against per 60 minutes, 5-on-5. That's really good defensively. I think they should be able to maintain that with Elias Lindholm there. So considering the ownership and considering that there's lower owned lines that I like as much elsewhere in the slate, I'm not going to say don't play Boston. It's still a 3.4 total with a perfectly correlated power play line with arguably the best goal scorer in the league on it. So I'm not going to say don't play Boston. I just think that there are other spots that I'd rather go to for lower ownership. The Coyle, DeBrusk, Marchand line, they're fine, but I think it's more of a situation where if I was power play stacking Boston, then I'd our Marchand or something like that. If I'm stacking Boston, I'm playing that Pasternak line. I'm not playing the Marchand, DeBrusk line. On the Vancouver side, I just mentioned how good the top line was defensively without Kuzmenko there. The second line was Suter there, around 65 minutes together, 40 shot attempts against per 60, 1.4 expected goals. That's really, really good. What I will note is that going into the break, Vancouver didn't really have a brutal schedule. The last 6 games before the break: Columbus, Arizona, Toronto, Chicago, St. Louis, Columbus. So like when half your games are against Columbus or Chicago, like I hope that your numbers look good. So I wouldn't read too much into that. But, Miller and Besser, really good numbers this season offensively. But a lot of it is it's not necessarily expected goals. A lot of it is that they do play well off the rush, which is something that was brought up. I think it was during the Tuesday night broadcast of that game, actually, against Carolina. Boston, they have great goaltending. They have their mostly full complement of defense. Parker Wotherspoon's going to be in for Shattenkirk. Shattenkirk, he does struggle defensively sometimes. So I'm not terribly excited about Vancouver, but this is still a 3 total on the road, right? It's higher than Colorado that we'll get to in a second. It's the same as Tampa Bay, who are facing an Islanders team with terrible defensive numbers this season. So you do have to kind of consider Vancouver. I would go to the Miller, Besser, Suter line. As you said, nope, not coming in with any ownership. 17,600 is perfectly reasonable. The thing is like, if Vancouver is optimal tonight, that I'm assuming part of it's going to be through the power play, and like stacking them and leaving off Pettersson, knowing that you probably need the power play to get there. And if the power play gets there, then, Lindholm had 2 goals the other night. Pettersson's had really good power play numbers all season. So I think it'd be more inclined that if I do play Vancouver tonight, it'd be lean more to an expensive power play stack rather than play them even strength. But if I were to play an even strength line, I think I would go to Miller, Besser, and Suter. Avoid that defensive matchup against Zacha and, try to take advantage of the middle 6 from Boston.
Yeah. I mean, middle 6 Boston's a little bit softer, but they're still pretty good. That's why you're seeing pretty low ownership. But it is a 6.5 total, which kind of threw me for a little bit of a loop. Colorado Avalanche with a 2.9 total heading into Carolina. The Hurricanes have a 3.2. Now, Carolina flip-flop Martinook and Jarvis. So the top line is now Aho, Jarvis, Teravainen, Netchus, Bunting, Kotkaniemi. Then the stall line is back together. Colorado going with the same lines, except they are putting Arturi Lehkonen back on the top power play instead of Ross Colton. That is noteworthy. Maybe not tonight, maybe. But, if Carolina had had a goalie, it might be not noteworthy tonight. But, Carolina's goaltending, bit suspect. I think that's why you're seeing them put Martinook back on the stall line, because they're going to want to hard match the stall line against McKinnon, Rantanen, and Drouin. And you're seeing that reflect in the ownership. Colorado won, currently projected at 2.9% ownership, highest positive leverage on the slate. That makes me nervous. Cliffy has a tweet about McKinnon from like 6 years ago about like basically joking how he's matchup proof, and I faded him because of the matchup. Now I'm begging for change by the coffee shop or something like that, something along those lines. It's one of my favorite tweets. But like, I don't think I'm going to play them in 1 to 3. They are the most expensive line on the slate. Maybe if I was playing 3 lineups, I would have one. But this is as tough of a 5-on-5 matchup as it gets. They have an excellent penalty kill. The question is the goalie going to save the shots, right? And the way the stall line is now, there's shot suppression machines. So like Colorado won, matchup proof, right? Even with Drew in there, they're matchup proof. But like, there's so many good spots on the slate that it's hard in a single entry lineup for me to play them. Now, if you say, hey, can I play Colorado 1 single entry tonight? I'd be absolutely insane if I said no, right? You can play them. This is just as tough of a matchup as they're going to have this season, with the exception of the goalie might suck, which is a big problem. You know what I mean? But so, yeah, I'm in on Colorado 1 in MME. I'd probably get over the field in 20 max 150. It's just, it's a brutal matchup. Now, with the stall line matching McKinnon, that's going to free up Aho, Jarvis, Teravainen against the middle 6 of Colorado. And, Colton, O'Connor, Wood have been pretty good offensively. They haven't been great defensively. Miles Wood's been struggling defensively. That third line, Ryan Johansson and Zach Parise at this point in their careers are just, Parise looked okay offensively, but like Ryan Johansson is just kind of a guy at this point. So I don't mind going to Carolina 1 here. They have a little bit of positive leverage. They have a 3.2 total. It's nothing to sneeze at. It is Georgiev and net, but they're 17-1 fully correlated, and Colorado takes a lot of penalties. So I'm in on Carolina 1.
Yeah, I do like Carolina 1 here as well. They don't have great expected goals numbers. The Jarvis Aho Teravainen line, it's 2.5 expected goals per 60 in about 100 minutes together this season. But you and I were talking before the show, and I like to look at like passing data, like the types of passes players make and things like that. Obviously, if you can set up like a seam pass, like go east to west across the offensive zone, you can get the goalie moving, you can get an open net for open shots and things like that. What I mentioned to you is Seth Jarvis accounts for 25% of the entire Carolina Hurricanes team's seam passes so far this season. Now, the data that I take that from at all three zones, like they don't have every single game tracked, but he's up over 300 minutes of time, a 5-on-5 time track. Like that's like 27 games or something like that. It's over half the season. He's literally accounts for 1/4 of the entire team seam passes, forwards and defensemen included. And when I was looking at the players that are right around him, like we're talking guys like Mikko Rantanen, William Nylander, Sidney Crosby, Robert Thomas, like these are great playmakers, and Seth Jarvis is right up there with them. So that's why like it's weird to see a Carolina line without good expected goals numbers, but with good goal scoring numbers. And I think it's what Seth Jarvis is doing. And you mentioned that middle six from Colorado, like in a small sample, that Johansson, Parise, Lehkonen line, Lehkonen and Johansson specifically have been fine defensively. I would like to see what that looks like over a bigger sample with Ryan Johansson at center. Like I'm not worried about any of the matchups from the Colorado side. And you mentioned all the penalties that they take, 3.9 minor penalties taken per game over the last 2 months. That's not, right up there with like Anaheim and Florida, but they're still 5th in the league for the most minor penalties taken in that span. Carolina above average by drawing power play opportunities. The power play hasn't been as good, obviously, without Andrei Svechnikov there. But if you give them like 4 or 5 opportunities, like all they need, like at that price, like they're only 17,100 with 5.5% ownership. At that price, like you probably don't need them to, double dong on the power play like you might need with Colorado or with Tampa Bay that we'll talk about a little bit later. So, middle six matchups, you get a better, really good playmaker to go up play with Aho. Correlated on the power play, good, not a bad power play spot. Like the Avs penalty kill itself isn't great. Like this isn't a Carolina or a Calgary or anything like that. So I do like Carolina 1 here. I did write up Martin Necas in the picks article today. 30 shots in 6 games since he came back from his injury, and also second on the team in ice time amongst their forwards in ice time in that span. He's not on the top line, but he's getting top line usage. Him and Jack Drury have been good together this season. 2.9 expected goals, 3.1 actual goals per 60. A lot of that is with Stefan Noesen, and Nason's actually been a pretty good player. It's going to be Michael Bunting with him tonight. But in a small sample, they have pretty good numbers with Bunting. So I don't think I would full stack Carolina 2. They're coming in over-owned. But like a Drury Necas 2-man, especially with they get secondary power play minutes. The second power play has been good. Colorado might be taking a lot of penalties. So like I don't mind like a Necas Drury 2-man or something like that. But it is Carolina 1 I like best on that side. With Colorado, like it's just getting frustrating with teams going into Carolina because our running joke this season has been if Carolina can get 850 goaltending, they probably win games. And they lost the other night with 840 goaltending. It was honestly perfect. Like literally one more save and they probably win that game. So that's the problem. It's like Colorado might not generate 25 shots here tonight, but against the Carolina goaltending, you don't even need 25 shots to score 4 or 5 goals. The one thing that worries me is like McKinnon is basically the only one taking all the shots. Mikko Rantanen under 14 shot attempts per 60 since January 1st. Jonathan Drouin, 14 shots in his last 10 games. Like, they need to generate high percentage shots. Now, I guess every shot against a Carolina goaltender is a high percentage shot kind of by definition because these guys suck. But I don't think that this is a case where I would full stack the line. I have no problem offing. I have no problem in him and Rantanen. But I think I'm on the Carolina side here more than anything. Colorado too is kind of interesting because they do put up pretty good offensive numbers together. Holden's power play role is a concern, but Carolina generally has a really good penalty kill anyway. I think Colorado too can kind of be used as a filler. But honestly, I think I would rather go to the Carolina side if I was going to go Carolina one. I like factoring in like ownership and price and all that.
Yeah, I'm wondering how long it is until Lehkonen goes back up to the top line because he's back on the top power play now. Drouin is effective on the power play. He's not very effective at 5-on-5. So,
I mean, I don't. As long as the top line is playing well enough and they're still playing pretty well together, I don't think they're in a rush to do it because this is a team that's got one of the problems not having forward depth. Maybe when Nichushkin comes back, that might change something if he comes back this season. But I don't think they're in a rush right now because like Drouin is still getting like 22, 23 minutes a night. Like it seems like they're really, going to stick with that for as long as they can.
Yeah. All right. Washington Capitals with a 2.4 total heading into Florida. The Panthers have a 3.6 total. He's happy. He's just chewing on his hand. Another slate, another negatively leveraged Washington one. And they're facing Barkov. They're facing a very good penalty kill. I don't see the appeal here. If you happen to get there, you get there, right? They're 15-2. Their historical numbers are pretty good. Ovechkin's best numbers over the past few years have been with Strome. So, yeah, that makes sense. But like 8.5% Washington won going against Barkov. That's just, nah. If you want to go to a line here tonight, for me, it would be McMichael, Oshie, Pacioretty. You get Oshie and Pacioretty on the top power play for whatever that's worth. It's not a great power play spot. But you were talking about McMichael before the show. I'll let you touch on that. They're only 11,800, and they're only coming in under 1%. So if you need, like, the thing is, there isn't a huge need for that cheap of a line here tonight, unless you're using Colorado 1, unless you're using Tampa 1 or something like that. So I don't even know if there's a huge need. And they also have a 2.4 road total. So, I don't know if you really want to make your ends meet stacking a 2.4 road total going up against one of the better teams in the East. So my interest lies on Florida here. Now, if you want to go to that Barkov, Reinhart, Rodriguez line against Ovechkin, Strome, Wilson, I think that's fine. Coming in with 6.9% projected ownership. They actually have pretty decent numbers on both ends of the ice. And they have, a decent penalty kill. For as bad as Washington is, they have a decent penalty kill. So that's probably their best two-way line, honestly. So for me, I'm going with Florida 2 here. Bennett, Verhaeghe, Tkachuk. Right now we have them with positive leverage. They're the third most expensive line of the night at 19.4. But that's not very cost prohibitive. You know what I mean? So, like, you can almost fit them in with whatever you want to do. So I think the ownership does come up a little bit. They have a 3.6 total. They get that McMichael, Oshie, Pacioretty matchup. McMichael and Oshie in a sample this year, a pretty high event. You throw Pacioretty into the mix, it's probably going to stay higher event. You know what I mean? So I'm in on Florida 2 here. You get Verhaeghe and Tkachuk on the top power play for whatever it's worth, but that is a very good 5-on-5 line. So I'm in on Florida 2.
Yeah, I do like Florida 2 here tonight as well. I wrote up Matthew Tkachuk in the picks article today. Free to read over at Stokastic.com. Just head on over to the NHL section. Tkachuk 27 points, 17 games since the break. But what I mentioned is that since that break, 38.2 shots, 3.2 expected goals, 4.8 actual goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. Like, these guys are absolutely just flying. The Washington side, like, there's not a defensive matchup that I'm necessarily worried about. I was looking at the Strome line's numbers since the break. 2.2 expected goals against, but 3.2 actual goals against. That's the matchup Barkov is going to go into, so that's probably the worst one. McMichael and Oshie, they do have good offensive numbers together. I'll talk about them in a second, but their defensive numbers, 66 shot attempts against and 3.2 expected goals against per 60 at 5-on-5. Like, those are pretty bad defensive numbers. That's probably the matchup that the Tkachuk line is going to see quite a bit of. The Washington penalty kill has been sliding a bit. Like, that had been one of their strengths basically through like the first 2 months of the season, 2.5 months even. Basically since the Christmas break, it's been on a slide closer to like middle of the pack than it was like top 5, top 6 to start the year. Florida is drawing a ton of power play opportunities. They're drawing 4.7 minor penalties per game over the last 2 months. If they get like 4 or 5 power play opportunities against Washington penalty kill, that honestly hasn't been all that good for a while now. I really do like Florida's potential on the power play here. Especially, I was looking at Florida's power play a little bit earlier, and the top power play unit has 10 power play goals in their last 10 games. So even though, like, Brandon Montour, we'll talk about defensemen later, he might not be getting in on a lot of points, but the top power play unit is certainly doing the damage, and that's included a few games without Barkov as well. So I really do like Florida too. People want to go to Florida 1. Like, I get it. Like, Florida 1 is coming in with less ownership at a lower price than Florida 2. And I do like playing that Florida line. The problem is like, they don't generate a ton of shots, right? I was looking, Barkov is at 2.4 shots per game over his last 10 games. And if you look at like his last 20, it's honestly not that much better. Evan Rodriguez, 21 shots in his last 10 games. Sam Reinhart has 2 DraftKings shot bonuses in his last 40 games. Like, he's still shooting over 27%. That's why he's been such a good player this season. Like, I don't mind riding percentages. That's how you have good DFS nights. But it worries me that, getting those shot bonuses that you can get from Tkachuk, that you can get from Verhaeghe, that you can get from even Sam Bennett without the top power play time, like, that upside isn't as prevalent with that top line as it is with the second one. So I do like Florida 2 here. On the Washington side, like I'm not playing that Washington top line. I'm not playing Strome and Ovechkin going into Barkov. I think the case for them would be power play opportunities, because I was looking at the Washington power play, 8.4 goals per 60 since they added Max Pacioretty. That's not great. That's not bad, though, and it's way better than what they were doing earlier in the season through their first 35 games or whatever. So maybe they can get there on the power play. But I'm going to be honest, like, if you're going to use Washington and you're going to use them because of the power play, just go to the second power play. Just go to the second line instead. Pacioretty, Oshie, McMichael, no ownership, 11,800. What I was mentioning to you about McMichael was he's amongst the top 50. I think it was top 50, either top 50 or top 25, but a lot of them are bunched together anyway. For rush contributions this season at 5-on-5, that's shots off the rush plus assists to teammates off the rush. He was right in line with names with literally like Connor McDavid. Connor McDavid wasn't that far ahead of him. The problem is McMichael, because there's been no scoring through Washington. He doesn't have, I think he has 1 secondary assist in the entire season. He doesn't have a good shooting percentage. But, Pacioretty and Oshie are both on the top power play unit. Florida is, I think they're the second most penalized team in the league over the last 2 months. The Washington power play has been getting better. I don't mind that Pacioretty, Oshie, McMichael line as a filler. But it is Florida 2 that I like best in this game by quite a bit.
Agreed. If you are looking to take your game to the next level, click that link in the chat, and you can get access to the best NHL data and tools in the industry. You get player and ownership projections, the top stacks tools, you get line combinations, and you get access to the premium Discord, which is invaluable. There are a ton of sharp members in there, always willing to help. Cliffy and Iro is in there. Jake and his jawline are in there. He reminded me to play on Yahoo. I actually have a balance on Yahoo. I went and checked my play on there, but they have plus and minus on Yahoo, so I don't know about that. And you have to pick 2 goalies. I don't know about that either. But click the link in the chat. Go premium. Say you came from the show. We'll welcome you. Clayton will read you the rules. Something about he wants to see your hands. I don't know. He likes people's hands. That's what I'll say. Calgary Flames with a 3 total. Heading into New Jersey, the Devils have a 3.5 total. Jack Hughes is back. That's a big boost on the offensive end. They're still missing a lot of defensemen and their goalies still suck, but at least they might actually score now. I know. And he'll be skating alongside Tyler Toffoli and your boy, Alexander Holtz, who leads the Devils in 5-on-5 goals. So that is a good landing spot for Mr. Holtz. They have a little bit of positive leverage here. Now, I'm a bit kerfuffled, confused. I don't know what word I just said, but the thing is, Calgary is a pretty good team defensively. They have a pretty good goalie, Markstrom. He's having a much better season this year than he did last year. I don't know what the matchups are going to be. We were talking about it. Like, Boston matched their top line against the backline line, but because Huberdeau was optimal, I don't want to talk about it. The last game, maybe they assumed the Sharangovich Kuzmenko line. I don't know. Like, I'm not sure at the end of the day the matchups truly matter. I like the Hughes line. I also like the Hischier line. I think if New Jersey does what Boston does and they send out Nico Hischier against Backlund, I'm more inclined to play Hughes to Foley Holtz here against either the Kadri line or the Sharangovich line. Now that's just me making an educated guess, and I don't know for sure. I don't think anyone really knows for sure outside of Lindy Ruff, and who knows what's going on in between those years. But I am interested in that Hughes line. On the Calgary side, if you want to play that Sharangovich, Huberdeau, Kuzmenko line, go fill your boots, my friends. Go do it. Like, I rattled off how many shots they had this season. It's not a lot. Huberdeau had his most efficient game of the season on Tuesday. You can chase it if you want. It's a good matchup. There's a couple guys on the top power play. Devils goaltending sucks. For me, it's the Kadri Zari Pospisil line, and they're coming with a bunch of negative leverage. But again, it's only 6.2% ownership. They're 11-4. You don't need a full stack because there isn't a super expensive line that you need. So I think going Kadri Zari is perfectly fine here. You want a full stack, that's fine. But I'm in on Kadri Zari. I think the Coleman line also is okay. The Sharangovich line, buyer beware, because they were super efficient and they just don't shoot enough.
Yeah, so I'll start on the Calgary side. I'm not sure if they're going to match up and use the Hischier line against Sharangovich or against the Backlund Coleman. What I do feel confident saying is that the Hischier line is not going to match against Nazem Kadri's line, which is why I kind of agree with you. I do like the Kadri line here as well. I wrote up Kadri in the picks article today. I'm not sure if people honestly realize like just how good he's been this year. He has 40 points in 41 games since Connor Zary got called up at the start of November. Like, Kadri's been almost a point per game player at like 3.4. I should probably bring up my article just to double check that. 3.4, 3.5 shots per game. So Kadri is definitely a threat to hit the block or to hit the shot bonus. They don't get a ton of ice time, but if I'm playing Calgary here tonight, like, I have to realize that they're all going to be overowned. But I think the way I would go about it is to honestly make some sort of power play stack. And while I do like the Kadri Zari Pospisil line, they have been good. New Jersey's at 3.7 minor penalties taken per game. That's well above the league average over the last 2 months. Calgary's at 3.8 power play opportunities per game on top of that. And now, while the Calgary power play hasn't been that good for most of the year, they were a lot better, in like the last 20 to 25 games heading into the bye week. I don't think, exchanging Lindholm for Kuzmenko is honestly going to change all that much about the power play. So like some sort of power play stack with like Kadri, Sharangovich, Huberdeau, Kadri, Kuzmenko, Huberdeau, like something like that, I think is probably the way that I would attack Calgary here tonight, because like it's still a 3 total. Like we talked about with Vancouver, like Vancouver had a 3 total. It's still a 3 total for Calgary. New Jersey gets Jack Hughes back, but they still are missing their top pair in Dougie Hamilton, Jonas Siegenthaler, and they're still using New Jersey goaltending, which has generally been awful this year, just not quite as bad as Carolina. So I don't mind some sort of Calgary power play stack here. I was going to even strength any line would be Kadri Pospisil, but I don't mind some sort of power play stack here. On the New Jersey side, I'm going to be honest right now. If they said that what the lines were this morning might not necessarily be the ones we see in warm-up. If warm-ups come around and Alex Holtz is skating with Tyler Toffoli and Jack Hughes, I'm probably playing that line. Like Alex Holtz is one of those prospects that I've really liked for a long, long time. He's starting to finally come around this season. Like problem is like all the New Jersey injuries have come at center or on defense. Like they haven't had a lot of injuries on the blue line. Or on the wing, sorry, and that's kept Alex Holtz, basically in a 4th line role pretty much all season. You mentioned the power play scoring. Like Holtz has 11 the even strength scoring. Holtz has 11 even strength goals. Only Tyler Toffoli has more. Holtz has the second most even strength points, or 5-on-5 points, sorry, of the Devils forwards, and he's been playing on the 4th line almost the entire season. Like this is a guy I've been very excited about offensively. There's a reasonable amount of ownership coming in on them, 8.6%. But honestly, I think that's perfectly fine. I don't think they're going to run Jack Hughes right into that Backlund Coleman line. And that's basically the only matchup that I'd be terribly worried about from a Calgary perspective. So I do like that Hughes line here, provided that Holtz is there. Like if warm-ups roll around, like I can just see them just kind of screwing shit around and throwing Dawson Mercer up there, or Nathan Bastian. We've seen him in the top 6, I think, for a couple of games this year. So as long as it's Holtz, Toffoli, and Hughes, I really have a lot of interest in that line. But I do think a Calgary power play stack should be considered. 1, it dilutes the ownership, and 2, they probably have to get there on the power play if they're going to be optimal here tonight.
Yeah. That's one of those games, I guess you have to wait and see. Lindy Ruff, gamesmanship, whatever you want to call it. He's a pain in the ass for DFS, but whatever. Winnipeg Jets, 2.9 total. Heading into Philadelphia, the Flyers have a 2.6 total. Lines looking the same. Tippett, Couturier, Atkinson, Konechny, Farabee, Frost, Connor, Scheifele, Velarde, Ehlers, Monahan, Perfidi. Now, I was kind of interested to see the minutes on Monahan, Ehlers, Perfidi. They all played 15, 16 minutes. Not truly second line minutes, which is kind of annoying because this is a pretty decent matchup against the Konechny, Farabee, Frost line. If you want to play them, it's fine. Like they're only coming in 1.7%, but they're 15-3. And so is the Farabee, Konechny, Frost line. I probably prefer to play them just because Konechny, Farabee, very good numbers together. What to do with Winnipeg 1 here is kind of the conundrum. They have, in a small sample, Connor, Scheifele, Velarde, very, very good numbers together. And this isn't the Couturier matchup that it was earlier in the season when it was Couturier, Konechny, and Forrester. With Atkinson and Tippett there, they are giving up 10 high danger chances against per 60 and I think like 2.75 expected goals against. It is what it is. Like, that's kind of average, you know what I mean, for a Couturier line. It's actually kind of bad for a Couturier line. You throw, Urson into the mix without Carter Hart there. I think there's a case to be made to going back to Winnipeg 1 here. They have positive leverage. They're 18-8, which is the 4th projected ownership. They're fully correlated on the power play, but this is still a tough power play spot. You need them to get there at 5-on-5. I think they can do it. I do like Winnipeg 1. While I play them, they tip it Atkinson, a little bit of negative leverage at 8.2% projected. I'd much rather just play the Flyers second line. So this is kind of an MME game, but Winnipeg 1's my favorite.
Yeah, it's, we were talking before the show that eventually this Winnipeg top line is going to just kind of explode. Like, we were mentioning how good on the last show, on Tuesday's show, how good Velarde and Scheifele had been with Ehlers. They're up to nearly 45 minutes together with Kyle Connor, 71 shot attempts, 4.2 expected goals per 60. Really, really good offensive numbers. You're right, the Couturier line, 2.4 expected goals against. That's really not that great. That'd be about league average. Remember, before the break, we were seeing Philadelphia routinely get, their asses handed to them at home. Colorado put up 7. Ottawa put up 5. Tampa Bay put up 6. Boston put up 6. Like, these are teams whose top lines are that have gone into Philadelphia and done extremely well. Like, there's nobody on Winnipeg's side that is David Pasternak's level, but David Pasternak had a 3-point game. James Van Riemsdyk, revenge narrative of all revenge narratives. He had a 3-point game when Boston went in there. So I get not wanting to use Winnipeg. It's probably one of those things where if I was playing 20 lineups, I might have a couple with the Jets, but they're not coming in with much ownership. 2.3% ownership, 6.2% top 2 stack percentage, perfectly correlated on the power play. Philly's penalty kill generally very good, but I don't mind Winnipeg 1 here, especially people that are playing multiple lineups here tonight. Winnipeg 2 is where it kind of gets interesting because, if you're worried about the Couturier matchup, there's no middle 6 matchups to worry about. Like, I'm not worried about the Frost line, and I'm not worried about, the third line after that with Cates and Forster. Forster's been pretty good defensively, but I'm not overly worried about that matchup. Ehlers and Perfidi, they don't have – they're another one of those lines where the expected goals numbers aren't great, but they have been scoring. Just don't get a lot of ice time. Like you said, about 15 to 16 minutes in the last game. I think that's the most you can ask for. In that range, there are a lot of lines in that 15K range here tonight. We talked about the over-owned Washington one earlier, but the New Jersey top line, 15,500. The Boston Marchand line, 15,800. Arizona we'll get to in a second. They're a little bit cheaper, but just under 14K. There are just a lot of lines that I think you can go to in that price range that I would prefer to play. Probably just rather go play the Philly side. Speaking of Philly, that top line, 3.8 expected goals per 60. Owen Tippett, Sean Couturier on the top power play unit. Speaking of generating off the rush, Owen Tippett top 5 in the league so far this season. It was absolutely absurd when I went and looked at it. Shots and assists off the rush. This is a team that does like to play fast. Laurent Brossoit is in net. It's not Connor Hellebuck. Now, Brossoit, I think, is a good goalie. Winnipeg is a really good defensive team. But I don't really hate the idea of going to that Philly top line. They're just coming in with more ownership than I thought they would. 8.2%. That's pretty high. Right, Spencer? That is pretty high against a Winnipeg team that has been one of the best defensive teams in the league this season. It's only a 2.6 total. So, I don't know. Given that ownership, I just think there are other spots I go to that have higher Vegas totals in the same price range. So, I think for me, if I'm playing anything in this game, it's Winnipeg 1. Elsewise, I'm looking elsewhere for backs.
Yeah, I kind of agree. It's a 5.5 total, so I'd rather look elsewhere. And just want to again say thank you guys for so much for the support through the affiliate signups and the super chats, as well as just letting you know that I will be having a MMA video out for this week's card either tonight or tomorrow morning. So stay tuned for that. We have MMA Sims. You can sign up with the link in the chat. And you can do weekly, you can do monthly, whatever you want. And that's all. If you didn't know, Super Bowl's this weekend. The Fighting Taylor Swifts against the 49ers. So if you are looking to MME some NFL, click that link in the chat. And you can sign up for NFL Sims. and have a chance to win $7.4 billion or whatever the NFL GPPs add up to, at least 600x what the NHL ones are. But anyway, let's get to the last two games of the night here. Tampa Bay Lightning with a 3 total heading into Long Island. That just sucks. The Islanders have a 3.4 total. This is interesting because the chalkiest line of the night is in this game, and it's the Islanders top line. That sucks because I want, like, at the outside of the day, I wanted to play them. I don't know if I can play them at 21% ownership here. 21.3% projected. Now, the way the Islanders match up at home, that Horvat Barzal Lee line is going to see a fair bit of that Cirelli Hagel Stamkos line. Now, Cirelli Stamkos have been awful this season. The thing is, last night against the Rangers, Stamkos played everywhere. So I don't know if they're going to be together. It is a back-to-back. We'll have to wait and see. I do like the Islanders top line. It's just an ownership issue. I think you can get different. You know, you can leave Lee off, add Dobson, leave Lee off, add Palmieri, add Nelson. Do it. You can make a power play stack here and kind of get different. That second line is also negatively leveraged, but if you do some sort of power play stack, even if all the guys are high owned, it's going to be a low owned combo, if that makes sense, or lower owned combo. I don't love Nick Paul on the top line. Now, Nick Paul kind of got moved around all over the place. Stamkos took shifts up on the top line. Hagel took shifts on the top line. It really depends what zone they were starting in. Who, like, if it was the defensive zone, you saw Hagel. If it was in the offensive zone, you saw Stamkos. Paul sometimes out there. So like he is on the top power play unit for whatever reason. And this is a pretty good power play spot. So I think you can power play stack Tampa here, but it is the Islanders top line that I do like, ownership agnostic.
Yeah, there is a lot of ownership coming in on them. 21%. They are the chalkiest line on the slate. The second line might honestly also be like a top 5 ownership line here tonight. So there's going to be a lot of Islanders. I think for good reason. The Tampa top line with Nick Paul there, 3.4 expected goals against per 60. In fact, I was looking at the Tampa top line's numbers when they have Brandon Hagel there. It's actually good, which is I think why you were talking about Hagel getting some defensive zone matchups with the top line. Without him, 3.3 expected goals against, 3.5 actual goals against per 60. Like they've just been getting run over. So it's a really good matchup for the Islanders top line at 5-on-5. I even wrote them up in the picks article. What I made sure to highlight, it's only 5 games under new coach Patrick Waugh, but their shots and expected goals at 5-on-5 are basically the same as they were before with Lane Lambert there. So it's a really good top line that's not that expensive, 17,200. Like I get why all the ownership is coming in on them. It's just whether you want to play a line that's going to be 20% owned tonight. And my one problem is that the Islanders don't take a lot of don't draw a lot of power plays, right? 2.7 minor penalties drawn per game over the last 2 months. League average is about 3.3. I think there are only a couple teams that are lower than them in that stretch. It's San Jose and Seattle off the top of my head. So like they don't draw any power plays. Like it is Jonas Johansson in net. They only need to get lucky once on the power play, and they're cheap enough where they don't need to, get 2 or 3 goals, or at least a couple goals with the man advantage, like Colorado might. So I have no problem playing the Islanders because they're cheap enough where you can, we just talked about Winnipeg at 2%. Like you can match up this Islanders line with that Winnipeg top line at 2%, and it's going to be a low in combination in most of the NHL GPPs. So I don't mind playing Islanders 1. I would rather play Islanders 1 at 20% than I would Islanders 2 at 10%. Like I'll say that much. Because the Islanders second line, if they do move up Stamkos, like Cirelli Hagel is a pretty good defensive line, and it wouldn't be that great. It wouldn't be that great for any of the lines, but it could be tough for Nelson and them. So it's Islanders 1 for me. I honestly think I like the Tampa side better here. That top line is perfectly correlated. coming in 8% ownership, 21.3% top two stack, one of the best positive leverage spots on the night. The Islanders' penalty kill has not been good all year. It's still not good. Maybe it'll get better with a bigger sample under Patrick Waugh. I guess we'll find out. But there's no matchup on the Islanders side that worries me either. And I think that, like, if I'm going to play an expensive line, like a line 19, 20, 22K or whatever, it is Tampa 1 that I do like best here. Tampa 2 is kind of interesting. Like, I think a Hagel Sorelli 2-man actually kind of makes sense, because once you get up against facing those second and third Islanders lines, like, there's no defensive matchups that I'd really be worried about. But it is the two top lines that I like best in this game. It's just really how much ownership are you willing to put up with to play the Islanders?
Yeah. I mean, I really do like the Islanders here tonight. I don't know if I'm going to play them at 20%, but we'll see. Vegas Golden Knights with a 3 total heading into Arizona. The Coyotes have a 2.6 total. My internet has decided it is not great, but we will fight through it for the last game. Barrett Hayton is back, not in his normal spot. He is in between Dylan Genther and Logan Cooley, which I like, but we'll see. I mean, I think they're trying to make McBain work, because McBain and Keller actually have some decent numbers together, and they're trying to lengthen the lineup. They're leaving, the Krause line intact. I don't know. I think eventually Hayton will move back up, but for tonight, he is on that line between Genther and Cooley. I do like that line, but Arizona's had a long layoff, and when you have long layoffs, you're going to see some sloppy hockey. It's a decent power play matchup, so I guess you can play them, and I would imagine Hayton slides right into the top power play. It's just I kind of worry. 2.6 home total. They haven't played in a while. Hayton hasn't played since November. I don't know. I kind of have a little bit of pause. If anything, I might just go back to Krause, Bukestad, Michelli. They've been good. It's just Vegas isn't very good defensively, and they don't have a great penalty kill. So I kind of want to get some power play exposure here. So I think, honestly, 3 Arizona lines are in play for me. It's just a matter of they're coming off a bye. They have a low home total, and you kind of know what you're signing up for here. On the Vegas side, it's the Marchessault, Roy, Barbashev line, and they are negatively leveraged, but they are the same price as the Islanders second line, and they're a little bit lower owned. I'd much rather play that Vegas line than Islanders 2 here. The only concern is there's only Marchessault on the top power play unit, and this is a very good power play spot. But, for 13-4, I am very interested in that line.
Yeah, I think if anything on the Arizona side, it would be the McBain, Schmaltz, Keller line. And the big reason for that is they're probably going to go out against the Stone line. And Stone and Stevenson have struggled defensively all season long. With Paul Cotter there, things have not gotten better. 3.4 expected goals against, 3.1 actual goals against. I think if I was going to play Arizona, it would be the top line. I am worried about them coming off the bye. Playing against Vegas, who did have that game, and they won against Edmonton. They broke Edmonton's win streak the other night. So if I'm going to play anything from Arizona, especially with Hayton down on I guess we have it listed as the 4th line. I think it'll end up being their 3rd line. I would still play Keller, McBain, and Schmaltz, but it is the Vegas side that I'm more interested in. I did write up the Vegas top line in the picks article today. 34.7 shots, 3.1 expected goals, 6.2 actual goals per 60 minutes in 110 minutes together. Now, obviously, they're riding nearly 18% shooting, but even if they were shooting 10%, they'd be scoring 3.5 goals per 60, which is really, really good. Marchessault on the top power play unit, but as you mentioned, this is a good power play spot for Vegas. Arizona, 4th most minor penalties taken per game over the last 2 months. Vegas power play has struggled, which is why you've seen Alec Martinez moved up there, which is I never thought I'd see that. But I do think if I were to play any Vegas even strength line, it would be that Vegas top line, the Roy Marchessault, Barbashev line. You mentioned the negative leverage, 9.7% against 4.3 top 2 stack percentage. Honestly, one thing I don't hate is that if you want to get like a little bit of additional power play exposure, because, like we said, this is a good matchup for the Vegas power play. One thing I don't mind doing is taking out Roy and putting in Carlson instead. That'll give you 2 guys on the top power play, and you can still use Barbashev. Use Roy and Carlson and take out Barbashev. I just think that there are ways to add power play guys to the Vegas side, to that line, to take advantage of what's not really a great to take advantage of what's not been a great penalty kill, to take advantage of an undisciplined team. And honestly, even with Hayton back, like the middle 6 is not going to be that good defensively once you get past that Keller line. So I really do like the Roy Marchessault Barbashev line. By far my favorite line in this game, one of my favorite cheap lines on this entire slate. If, like I said, if you're going to play Arizona, I think I'm going to wait on that one.
Got the dog stamp of approval too. If you couldn't hear, all sorts of things going over here. Let's talk a little bit about defensemen here. I'm just going to kick it to you because it is very loud over in my neck of the woods right now.
Yeah, I get it. Noah Dobson, Victor Hedman on both sides of that Tampa and Islanders game. It's a 3.5 total. Mikhail Sergachev was hurt last night, so with him out, there's probably going to be some more minutes for the regular guys to go around. So I do like Dobson and Hedman. Obviously, Cale Makar. I think Cale Makar he's always in play, and especially on a night like tonight where I don't think he's going to come with a lot of ownership. The middle price range I think is interesting. I wrote up Noah Hanifin in the picks article. He was on pace for like a 43-point season before he got moved to the top power play unit for Calgary. And like I mentioned earlier on the show, I think this is a good power play matchup for the Flames. So Noah Hanifin, one of my favorite mid-price guys. Brandon Montour for Florida at home. Obviously, he's in play. Josh Morrissey, I think, is pretty interesting at 5,600. Like, he's still putting up decent peripherals. Winnipeg has had trouble scoring. Jeez, I've had trouble speaking apparently. But they had their full complement of players back. Remember, Velarde was out for a while. Mark Scheifele missed a lot of time. Kyle Connor missed a lot of time. So on and so forth. Now that everybody's back, I think Morrissey's price is probably only going to go up from here. Brent Burns for Carolina as well. Cheaper guys. Simon Nemec, of course, from New Jersey. I'll always use him. I think this is a good matchup for his peripherals. Wrote up Neil Pionk. Brendan Dillon got suspended for Winnipeg. He's not one of the heavily used guys, but I do think there may be some more minutes to go around. Pionk is only, I think, 3,500 on DK, so I don't mind that. Braden McNabb from Vegas. I just do like Vegas here tonight. He's good if you want to use a cheaper defenseman. Also a handful of really cheap defensemen I like here tonight. Wotherspoon is in for Shattenkirk in Boston. He's only 2,800. Don't mind him. Egor Zamula, 2,600. I guess he's running the top power play now. That role changes, it seems like, every single game. Welcome to being coached by John Tortorella, but 2,600 against the Jets. If there's one place where the Jets have struggled this year, it is on their penalty kill. Nick Jensen for Washington. I mean, against Florida, they might have to block some shots here tonight. I think 2,600 on DK is just fine. And Eric Chernak, if you need a stone min punt, again, Tampa Bay without Sergachev, Chernak might have to pick up a few more minutes. So stone min punt, don't mind him.
Yeah, thank you for taking that. The dogs decided to bark at nothing. Classic bacon. But let's talk about goalies. At the top of the board tonight, we have Bobrovsky, 8,500 on DraftKings. I think he's fine in cash games. It's a winnable game for Florida. Aiden Hill starts. I do have some interest in him at 8,300. If it is Logan Thompson, it's kind of the same thing. Hill has been better this season, though. Not really interested in Vitek Vanacek at 8,200. I am interested in, I think it's Olmark's turn tonight at 8K. But then going down the list, I think Brossoit, 7,900 is okay. I like Georgiev. I like Demko. And then, the couple that stick out and the lower end are Ingram and Markstrom.
Yeah, I wrote up Hellebuck in the picks article. Obviously, it's Brossoit starting instead, but I still don't mind Brossoit because a lot of the performance has been from the defense and from the team and not necessarily the goaltender. So I don't mind him if you want an expensive road goalie. Sorokin at home against a back-to-back Tampa team that just lost Sergachev. Don't mind him. Also, Rob Georgiev. Like, I always play goaltenders going into Carolina. Tonight is no exception. So, assuming Georgiev gets a start, don't mind him. Also mentioned Connor Ingram. If Arizona wins that game tonight, it feels like it's not going to be because they beat Vegas like 6-5 or something like that. It's probably because Ingram has a really good game. So if you need a really cheap goalie tonight, don't mind Ingram at 7,100 on DK.
Yeah, I do like Ingram. Just the layoff does worry me. Who do you like him for your hat trick pick?
It's not an off the board pick, but I think it's going to be a low owned pick. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to Winnipeg and I'm going with Kyle Connor.
Thought you were going Alex Holtz, but I don't have enough faith in anyone on Winnipeg. I am going. Me either. I am going Iron Man's computer, Seth Jarvis.
Nice. I mean, I think it might be on Carolina tonight. We'll see. Wouldn't mind that if that's the case for sure.
Yep. I do like Carolina tonight. And we will be back Saturday. I think tomorrow's and there I go. I just disconnected and now I'm reconnecting. There I am. Yeah, we'll be back on Saturday. Yeah. We'll be back on Saturday without this guy. We'll have someone watching Spencer, but this went better than I thought it was. So good luck, everybody. Make sure to click that link in the chat if you are looking to go premium. Good luck, everybody, and hope you win some money.
Yeah, good luck tonight, everyone. And thanks a lot, Spencer. Maybe he'll be our good luck charm. Thanks a lot for a great show. Good luck, and we'll see you on Saturday.